You're listening to John the Recruiter Podcast, JTR, where we discuss everything recruiting. If you're looking to get into recruiting or to become a re-energized recruiter, stay tuned and be prepared to be motivated. Welcome to Episode 4 of JTR Podcast. I'm John the Recruiter. Well, we dropped our first episodes this week, and I'm very excited to get some feedback and look forward to my first guest coming very soon. Today we're going to discuss social media and using it to your advantage. Let's be honest, this is what most recruiters rely on now, social media. It's the fastest way to reach the most amount of candidates. You can post jobs, you can search for specific people with specific skills, you can do a lot of things. I started without this, and when it started getting popular, it was a learning curve for sure. And I'm still learning, as you always have to in recruiting. How do I use it to help me in my recruiting success? Well, I wanted to build my brand by letting everyone know I was a recruiter. I wanted to find candidates, and ultimately, I wanted to use social media to produce referrals. I also wanted to see what my competition was up to. I think you start by building connections and followers and staying active on those sites. I'm being honest. It is hard to keep up on all of them, so for me, I picked just a couple, and I tried to master them the best I could. I think if you try to pick more than a couple, you're going to get overwhelmed and you're not going to be able to keep up with it. If you're just getting started, I feel this is just the best way to go about it. Pick one or two and stick with it. Here are some helpful tips to get started. Start with building your profile about your recruiting position and your company itself. And then start making connections as soon as possible. Make connections with employers, other employees in your company, others in similar fields to what you hire for, any organizations, leaders in those organizations. Use videos, use hashtags, join groups, and be active in those groups. When I joined groups of similar things that were positions maybe I was trying to hire for, maybe truck drivers, and you join a truck driving group for drivers, and then try to be active in it and post jobs. And once they accept you, get in there, be as active as you can in there. People who help find other people jobs, workforce development centers, things like that, or in the medical fields, other similar recruiters or agencies, get in with them. That could help you, and some of it might be your competition, but if you get in with them, you can help each other. I know people try to say, well, I don't work with my competition, but you might be surprised. The goal is to make as many connections as you can. You want to post job recs that you're trying to hire for. One thing that I also like to do is post benefits of your company. I always like to post all kinds of benefits, and especially if we had new benefits coming out around the new year, especially if they improved benefits, I would post that. Just, you never know when you're going to catch a person that likes what your benefits are doing, and it might attract them to your company. And they might call me or text me or reach me over social media to say, hey, I'm interested in that. You might not have a position now, but if you have one in the future, and then that would give me a good connection. Post important things that your company does. People like to see what companies do in the communities or what they do to give back. It might attract them. So like if my company was doing great things in the community, I would always want to post that because people like to see that, and that might attract them, to think about applying for a job at your company or looking at your job recs or keeping in touch with you. I always posted any awardees, whether it was like something like Employee of the Month, whether it was at like our corporate office or even out at other locations, just post stuff like that, because people see when your company's recognizing employees, that's a good sign of a good company. And they like to see that. The key is really just to get the buzz going and create interest. And as you do that over your social media, more people see it, and you're just planting seeds everywhere over social media, and people see it. So as you can see, you have to be relentless on this in order to be successful with social media, and you got to stay engaged on it. So does your company spend money for social media? For example, did they purchase you Recruiter Lite or Indeed or ZipRecruiter or some other things that maybe you use? And what if they don't? Or if they cut costs or spend very little on platforms? What can you do to still be successful? Well, one thing that I would do is, if they don't spend a lot of money or they don't spend none, is you have to build your own connections, like we talked about a little bit earlier. And the more connections you build, the better chance you have of getting candidates. And the more candidates you get and the more connections you get, it can help produce referrals for you. So, for example, I'm going to take this podcast. When I started this podcast, my goal was like, hey, if I could do something like this, I want to get like at least 100 listeners in my first few episodes by using social media prospecting. So I started by building my connections, and I did connections with like talent acquisition, other recruiters, some business leaders, organizations. I joined some groups. I concentrated mainly on like LinkedIn and Facebook. And I did this to increase the amount of connections. And I just figured the more connections I got, the better my chances of reaching my goal were. And I don't know if like 100 listens is a good number or not, because I just wanted to start a podcast. I really had no end goal of like, oh, I want to make money. I just really wanted to do this to just because I like recruiting and get the word out. And I know a lot of social media they grade things by impressions. I'm going to talk a little bit differently here. I put no money into this. So with no money added into it, I just did my time. And with adding connections, outside of my normal working hours, I guess, even though I'm retired, I probably spent a few hours a day on this. I'm past the first 24 hours of it being dropped, and I have 54 listeners or 54 plays. And I started posting about it probably about a week prior to the first show, well, maybe 4 days to my first episode dropping. And I started relying on those on social media that I communicated with to tell others, to hopefully get some referrals to listen to the show. Now, since I'm doing this show, it's only a day and a half since the show's been out. So with 54 listens, but I will tell you, on LinkedIn, I have around 2,500 connections. In Facebook, I have around 900 connections. And on Snapchat, I have around 200 connections. So I sent that I was doing this show to all those. That equals around 3,600 connections. So in around 48 hours, I have 54 listens. So the way I figure this out, I figured like if you divide that in there, that means for every 67 people, I get a listen. I know this is weird, but that's just the way I figured out. So I figure if I go on every day and reconnect with another 67 people, I should get a listen. This is just a first step. So for me, this is just saying every day if I do that, another 67 connections, I should get another listen. So if I want to grow even more on social media, if I double that, maybe I'll get 2 listens. It's like a law of averages. I don't know if it's actually right or not, but it's a good starting point. But if I track this for like 30 days, I bet I can get a pretty close number on what I will actually need on social media to figure out how many connections I need to get more listeners. But at least I started somewhere, and That's the relentlessness and being engaged to be better at using the social media. What do you think I could have done better? I could have made videos. I could have done hashtags. I think I could have worked with other podcasters earlier, and I could have been on their shows to promote mine. I'm sure there's more. You have to learn to critique yourself and take notes and be ready to make adjustments. The more you take ownership of your own actions, the more successful you'll become. And I think doing your own analysis of your social media prospecting and its successes and shortfalls is going to help you. This will help your recruiting prospecting time and your approach to finding future candidates. If you look back and see what time you spent and how you did, you can always adjust on like, okay, how can I be better at it to save time so I can get better results and spend more time where I need to get better at it. This is going to help you in your prospecting and improving your skills as a recruiter. So we're going to cover more on this on my episode about the prospecting mode mining when we get to that, and we talked about more into the mining. I wanted to discuss social media first so you could start building your brand and getting connections, because that's going to help you when we get to mining and get ready for some mining in the future. So thanks for listening to John the Recruiter podcast. Stay motivated and be relentless. Thank you for listening to the JTR podcast. I retired in 2018 from the United States Navy as a Master Chief, and most recently was a Director of Recruiting for a company with over 80,000 employees. With over 25 years of experience in recruiting and recruiting leadership in some of the most challenging fields and markets. Stay tuned for more tips to be relentless. Stay motivated.